The high hall of Drakthir Peak shimmered in molten gold, sunlight pouring through crystal spires. Beneath the vaulted ceiling, the Dragon Emperor sat upon the throne of flame. Veyrath the Unyielding, scales black as midnight, eyes molten amber, ruled with a reputation carved in fire and stone. Before him, courtiers whispered like dry leaves. The news had spread faster than lightning in a summer storm. The Emperor's youngest hatchling was flawed. Kairn had been born small, his left wing crumpled like scorched parchment, his fire gland underdeveloped. Among dragons, strength was not merely admired, it was law. A hatchling who could not fly nor breathe flame was a shame that clung to the bloodline. Veyrath's jaw tightened. He had heard the murmurs. Best to let the little one go before winter. A cripple cannot serve the sky. Mercy is swifter than dishonor. The law of flame was ancient. Dragons unable to claim the sky were cast out or ended. To break it was to invite rebellion. Yet when Veyrath had stood over the nest that first night, gazing down at the tiny bundle of warm, trembling scales, the thought of ending Kairn's life had felt like plunging a claw into his own heart. But an emperor could not show weakness. Not here. Not now. When court adjourned, Veyrath dismissed his guards and slipped into his humanoid form, a tall, broad-shouldered man with bronze skin and eyes that glowed faintly like banked embers. Cloaked in travel garb, he descended the winding road into the human quarter at the mountain's base. He told himself it was to clear his mind. Truth was, he could not bear the sight of Kairn's empty perch without knowing where the boy had wandered. The scent of roasting bread and the sharp tang of ale drifted from a small tavern tucked between stone houses. Through the open door, Veyrath froze. There, in the center of the warm, dim room, a young human woman moved between tables with practiced ease, balancing a tray of mugs in one hand. Dark hair was braided back from her face, her sleeves rolled to the elbow. And in her other arm, wrapped in a patchwork cloth, was Kairn. The hatchling's tiny head rested against her shoulder. She murmured to him softly, her voice like a low stream running over smooth stones. "It's all right, little one. You'll get there. One step at a time. Even if it's just hopping before you're flying." Veyrath's chest tightened. Kairn's tail twitched. A small sound escaped him, not the keening cry he gave when frustrated, but something almost content. The tavern was loud, clinking cups, laughter, footsteps, yet this human moved as if the fragile bundle in her arm were the most important thing in the world. No courtier had ever looked at the boy that way. Not even Veyrath, if he was honest with himself. He lingered in the doorway, cloaked in shadow. Dragons did not show tenderness. They trained or they culled. Weakness was to be burned away, not coddled. And yet, there was no weakness in the way she held him. There was a kind of quiet certainty there, as if she knew something he did not. When the tavern emptied near dusk, she carried Kairn to a small corner table, settling him in her lap while she wiped down mugs. The boy gurgled weakly, lifting his good wing before it drooped again. She kissed the top of his scaled head without hesitation. "You're a fighter," she whispered to him. "Doesn't matter if it takes longer. You'll make your own way in the sky." Veyrath's hands curled at his sides. That was not how dragonkind spoke of the unfit. But something in him resisted calling it foolish. A gust of wind rattled the tavern shutters. The woman glanced toward the door, her gaze flicking over the hooded figure standing there. She didn't flinch. She simply shifted Kairn in her arms protectively, as if she were ready to shield him from a storm or a king. Veyrath turned away before she could speak. His thoughts churned like molten rock beneath a cooling crust. He had come to the human quarter to clear his mind, yet he left with it tangled in a knot. A human had done what an emperor could not, hold his son without shame. As night fell over Drakthir Peak, Veyrath climbed back toward the citadel, the image of that small act burning hotter in his mind than any flame he could conjure. Veyrath returned to the tavern at dawn, this time in his true form. The street outside was narrow, lined with shuttered windows and stone walls. His talons scraped the cobbles, his shadow spilling over the tavern's roof. The door opened before he could knock, or break it down. The same woman stood there, hair loose this time, eyes steady. In her arms was Kairn, swaddled in the same patchwork cloth. "You left him here last night," she said flatly. Veyrath's molten gaze narrowed. "I did not leave him. He wondered. Then your kind don't watch their young very closely, she replied, shifting Kairn higher against her shoulder. Few beings dared speak to the Dragon Emperor that way. His pride prickled, yet there was no fear in her tone, only quiet reproach. I am Veyrath, he said, letting the name fill the air with weight. I have come for my son. You'll have him when I know you won't abandon him again, she said. The sheer audacity of it almost made him laugh. Almost. You know what I am. A dragon. And by the look of him, his father. She met his gaze without flinching. Doesn't change the fact that he's a hatchling who can't fend for himself. Veyrath stepped closer, lowering his massive head until his eye was level with hers. Among dragons, a hatchling who cannot fly is not long for this world. I guessed as much, she said softly. But among humans, we don't measure worth by how far you can fly or how hot your fire burns. We keep our own close, no matter their shape or strength. Her words struck something deep in him, a chord he hadn't known was there. Strength is everything, he insisted. Without it, a dragon is prey. Maybe, she said, stroking the hatchling's neck, but there's more than one kind of strength. What good is fire if it burns your own? Kairn stirred, stretching his good wing. The woman smiled down at him, murmuring encouragement. Veyrath watched, noting how the boy's breathing slowed in her arms. In the citadel nursery, Kairn's rest was fitful, punctuated by sharp cries. Here he seemed at peace. What is your name? Veyrath asked. Marin Holt. She hesitated. And before you ask, no, I'm not afraid of you. Not while you're holding still, anyway. Against his better judgment, Veyrath shifted into his humanoid form to speak more easily. Why do you care for him? He is not yours. Because no one else was, she said simply. I found him struggling near the ridge. Could barely keep his balance. You'd have thought he'd fallen from the sky. He was crying, so I picked him up. She paused, meeting his gaze again. I don't see a cripple, Emperor. I see a boy who wants to live. For a long moment, Veyrath said nothing. He had ruled for centuries, crushed rebellions, fought sky duels that lasted days. Yet here, in a quiet street, a human waitress had stripped his arguments bare with a few plain words. Over the next hours, he remained in the tavern's shadowed corner, watching as Marin tended her work. She never set Kairn down for long, balancing him on her hip while carrying trays, pausing to let him grasp at the mugs and spoons as if they were toys. At one point, she crouched low, encouraging him to hop from one stool to another. That's it, Kairn. One more. You've got it. The hatchling's stubby legs trembled, but he made the leap, and Marin's cheer was bright enough to make even Veyrath's lips twitch upward. When the tavern quieted again, Marin approached his table. If you want him to have a chance, you'll need to teach him more than dragons teach their strong. Let him fail and try again. Give him time. Time makes the weak weaker, Veyrath said, though the words rang hollow even to him. Or it lets them grow strong in their own way, Marin countered. But that's up to you, not him. He looked at her, at the defiance, the warmth, the certainty, and realized this human had no idea she was reshaping an emperor's thoughts with every sentence. When he finally took Kairn back into his own arms, the boy chirped and nuzzled against him instead of squirming away. Marin's scent clung to him, bread, smoke, and something stubbornly alive. Veyrath left before the sun set, but the image stayed burned in his mind, his son, smiling in the arms of someone who had no reason to care. The wind over Drakthar Peak carried the scent of storm. In the high hall, the air was thicker still, not with rain, but with challenge. Lord Zevrik stood before the throne of flame, silver-scaled and tall even by dragon standards. His eyes gleamed like cold steel. Your hatchling is weak, Veyrath. The law of flame is clear. Such a one must not remain in the brood. Murmurs rippled through the gathered council. Every dragon in the chamber could sense the tension coiling between the two rulers. Veyrath sat motionless, though his claws dug shallow grooves in the obsidian armrest. Kairn is my son, he said. That is irrelevant, Zevrik snapped. Tradition exists for the good of the sky. Keep him, and you weaken the empire. Others will follow your example, and our enemies will grow bold. It was a familiar argument, one Veyrath himself had made in his youth. But the image of Kairn in Marin's arms, smiling despite his struggles, rose unbidden in his mind. "I will hear no further slander against him," Veyrath said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of stone. Zevrek's tail lashed. "Then let the trial decide. Present him at the Sky Arena in 7 days. If he passes, he may remain. If he fails, the law will have its due." The council roared its approval of the challenge. Veyrath inclined his head once, though inside his thoughts churned like a storm-tossed sea. That night, he returned to the tavern. Marin was cleaning tables, her sleeves rolled, hair escaping her braid. She looked up at the shadow that filled the doorway. "I thought you'd be back," she said. Veyrath shifted to human form and stepped inside. "They have given Kairn a trial," he said. "A public one." Her brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" "If he fails to glide and breathe fire before the council, he will be removed." Marin set the rag down slowly. "Removed? Killed," Veyrath said bluntly. Her jaw tightened. "Then we make sure he doesn't fail." The next days blurred into a routine Veyrath had never imagined for himself. At dawn, he met Marin and Kairn outside the tavern, where the earth sloped gently toward the valley. Marin had fashioned a harness of leather and wood, strapping it over Kairn's shoulders to support his twisted wing. "Hold the ends here," she told Veyrath, placing the cords in his claws. "When he jumps, you give just enough lift to keep him steady." Kairn hopped from a rock, the brace creaking. His good wing flapped hard, the bad one shuddering. He landed awkwardly but upright. Marin crouched beside him, rubbing his snout. "Better. Let's try again." Day after day, the little hatchling grew more confident. He managed short glides, sometimes half falling, but each time he landed grinning. Marin clapped for him every time. At night, she worked on the brace by lantern light, adding metal springs, adjusting straps. "He's learning to trust his body," she told Veyrath. "That's the first step." One evening, while Kairn slept curled in the patchwork cloth, Marin fixed Veyrath with a steady gaze. "Why are you really doing this? Is it to prove something to them, or to yourself?" Veyrath hesitated. "In the quiet," he admitted, "when I was young, I believed only the strong deserved to live. No, I am not certain what strength truly is." Marin smiled faintly. "You're closer to the truth than most already." On the morning of the trial, the Sky Arena was a ring of stone carved into the mountainside, packed with dragons from across the Empire. The air crackled with expectation. Zevrek watched from the council tier, a smirk playing over his muzzle. "Let us see if the Emperor's pet can fly." Veyrath stood beside Kairn at the arena's edge. The brace gleamed in the sunlight, leather-polished, springs taut. Marin stood just behind, her hand on Kairn's back. "You've got this," she whispered. "One leap. One breath. That's all." Veyrath's chest tightened. In moments, his son would either rise, or be lost forever. And for the first time in centuries, the Emperor of Dragons felt fear. The Sky Arena was silent. Thousands of dragons leaned forward, wings rustling like dry leaves in the wind. Kairn stood at the edge of the stone platform, the valley yawning below him. The leather brace hugged his shoulders, the polished springs gleaming. His good wing flexed. His twisted one trembled. Marin knelt beside him, speaking softly. "Remember what we practiced. Push with your legs, flap steady, and when you land, no matter how it looks, you lift your head. You've already won." Veyrath stood tall behind them, in full imperial form, his black scales reflecting the morning sun. The council watched from their high tier, Zevrek's smirk sharp as a blade. The herald's voice rang out. "The hatchling Kairn, son of Emperor Veyrath, faces the trial of flame. He will leap, glide, and breathe fire before the council. Failure is death." Veyrath's talons scraped stone. His instincts screamed to carry Kairn away, to burn the arena down and end this farce. But Marin's hand brushed his foreleg briefly, a human gesture of trust. Kairn took a breath, eyes fixed on the open air. Then he jumped. For one heart-stopping moment, he dropped like a stone. Gasps rippled through the stands. Then the brace caught the wind, the good wing pumping hard. The bad wing wobbled, but the springs flexed, giving just enough lift. He didn't soar. He didn't wheel in grand arcs like the healthy hatchlings did. But he glided, straight, determined, until his claws scraped the far ledge. He stumbled, caught himself, and lifted his head high. The arena erupted in noise. Some roared in disbelief, others in scorn. Veyrath leaned forward, lips curling. One glide. Now let's see him burn. Kairn planted his feet. His chest heaved. A small flicker of orange danced between his teeth, sputtered, then steadied into a thin, bright flame. It wasn't much, but it was his. Veyrath's throat burned with something dangerously close to pride. Veyrath's voice cut through the noise. A feeble glide and a candle's flame. This proves nothing. The Emperor turned slowly to face the council. It proves everything. Strength is not the absence of flaw, it is the will to rise despite it. Murmurs swelled. Veyrath's voice carried over them all. The law of flame ends today. From this moment, no hatchling will be judged unworthy of life because of how they are born. The Empire will find a place for all who wish to serve it. Gasps turned to uproar. Half the council rose in protest. Others, fewer, but louder, roared their approval. Veyrath's eyes narrowed to slits. You would remake our laws for one hatchling? Veyrath's gaze was molten steel. For one hatchling who reminded me what an emperor is meant to be. He stepped forward, lowering his massive head toward Marin. And for the human who showed me there is more than one kind of strength. The crowd quieted. A dragon had just publicly honored a human. That alone was unheard of. Marin Holt, Veyrath declared, you are named honorary skykeeper, guardian of my son, and friend of the Empire. This title has never been given to a human before. Wear it with pride. Marin's eyes widened, but she only inclined her head. I'll wear it for him, she said, glancing at Kairn. The trial ended not with the expected death, but with Kairn clambering onto his father's foreleg, wings spread wide as if claiming the arena for himself. Dragons in the crowd looked on, some in awe, some in disbelief, but none could deny what they had seen. Weeks passed. The political storm raged, but Veyrath did not bend. The new decree stood. Training grounds were adapted, roles opened for dragons who could not fly or breathe flame. In the courtyard of the citadel, Marin walked beside Kairn as he practiced glides from low walls. The boy landed with a thump, grinning, his brace creaking. You're getting better, Marin said, brushing dust from his scales. Veyrath landed nearby, his shadow stretching across the courtyard. His range has doubled since the trial. Because someone finally gave him a chance, Marin replied, without looking up. Veyrath studied her for a long moment. When I first saw you, I thought you were foolish. Now I see I was the fool. She smiled faintly. Sometimes even emperors need to be shown how to see. Kairn bounded toward the practice ramp again, determined to try once more. Marin followed, and Veyrath watched them both, his son and the human who had changed the fate of an empire, feeling, for the first time in many years, truly unyielding.